In '09, I made a video called I Want An Internship at Entertainment Weekly. I think it was very novel then to do that kind of thing. I tweeted it at all their writers and just kind of sent it to all of them, and it got the editor's attention, and I got asked to come up for an interview, and it all happened after that.
Grady, your first internship out of college was at Entertainment Weekly, which meant a lot to you because you were a fan of Entertainment Weekly, right?
Yeah, I loved Entertainment Weekly. I went to boarding school, and I was like B tier in terms of my cool level at school. I mean, I was well liked, I guess, but not cool. But like the coolest dude at school, Gordon Crangshaw, he was like the senior prefect, the valedictorian, captain of the soccer team. He was like like low key was my friend behind the scenes. And he always got Entertainment Weekly in his mailbox and didn't read it. And that was his like one friendship gesture, is he would just slide it into my mailbox. And I started reading that magazine, got super into it. And then, I guess I manifested an internship there I made a video.
Yeah, how'd you get the internship? Because this story kills me. So what'd you do? How'd you get the gig?
In '09, I made a video called I Want An Internship at Entertainment Weekly. I think it was very novel then to do that kind of thing. And I tweeted it at all their writers. It was all full of inside jokes. Like, I called out every writer on staff by name and was like, oh, whatever was jokes that were relevant at the time. Like, Michael Slezak, I also thought Fantasia should have won American Idol, or stuff like that. And just kind of sent it to all of them, and it got the editor's attention, and I got asked to come up for an interview, and it all happened after that.
How old were you?
20?
Okay, so you get this internship, dream job, because you're reading this publication, and now it's like, okay, you're there. Oh, what do you do? Like, out of the gate, do you do like intern stuff, or do you do anything interesting?
So, okay, so I was obsessed with the box office. That was my like initial thing, is I loved the movies and I loved the film industry. So all through like college, I ran this blog that everyone made fun of me for called The Box Office Junkie. And it was all like, you would do fantasy box office on Thursday night and predict how much the top 10 was going to make. And then on Sundays,
Fun.
I would do like a report of how much everything had made. And that's how I got into making videos. That was all on YouTube. And like, now I know that's a very poor YouTube strategy, like to make something that's only going to be relevant for a week. That's not smart. But that's kind of what I was doing at the time. And so when I was up there, I was working in the movies department, and they would have me do, definitely intern stuff. I mean, I got to do a few cool things, but mostly you're transcribing for people. They didn't have such sophisticated transcription software where you could just enter in an audio file and it would spit out all of it kind of transcribed. You would just sit there and some editor would be like, hey, I talked to Brad Pitt for 2 hours in Paris for this cover story, and just give you a 2-hour file, and you would sit there for like 3 days transcribing the whole thing.
So here you are in like this dream internship, and you're like, oh my God, this sucks. Like, this is horrible.
No. You're so excited and
you're enthusiastic
naive and dumb to how like the working world works. So I love it.
Okay, so there's a moment, and maybe eventually they hired you, right?
Yeah, they hired me. I went back to school, but I moved up there without the job, knowing I wanted them to hire me. So I didn't have a job when I first moved to New York. I just subletted for 3 months. It was like, hopefully they notice that I'm up here. And it worked.
Okay, so there's a moment where you're working at Entertainment Weekly, and you're doing the box office, and you're doing movies, and the editor, Leah Greenblatt, comes. What does she do? She sends an announcement out to the office, and she says, Jake Owen has a new album, and we need someone to cover it. And nobody was into country music, or like nobody wanted to cover it.
Yeah, they would farm out any country reviews to this guy, Michael Wood. And he got hired by the LA Times and had a non-compete. So he suddenly couldn't do this little capsule review. It wasn't even a big review. It was like an eighth of a page, 90 words or something. And she was like, can anyone just review this and turn it around tomorrow? And I was like, I mean, I like country. At the time, I was really having a resurgence with it. I knew exactly who Jake Owen was, and I was like, I'll do it. And that was kind of my first assignment in that world. And when it went online, I remember it did confusingly well. Like, we weren't a big music brand, and I just saw the traffic. I'm like, that's kind of a well-performing blog post. And I remember trying to figure out why and looking up other reviews of that album, and there was none, like, in the country. No other major publication had reviewed what was a top 10 album on the Billboard chart, and it just kind of immediately clicked. Like, I got begged to be in the magazine. No one else is covering this, and I think it's interesting. And so I sort of leaned in after that.
So you found this. What was the review? Was it positive, or what did you have to say about the album?
It was like the peak of bro country, and I themed the whole review on the letter B. I remember it was stupid. It was like, after all the beers and babes and beaches and brews, it all sounds like blah, blah, blah. And I gave it a B minus.
Ouch. A B minus. Okay.
Fine.
It's fine. 6 out of 10. Okay, so you do this review, and then what do you realize, wait a second, maybe I could be a voice for country music in the media space? Like, was it that, did it happen like that?
It was more just like, that was fun. She's a great editor. Leah was my favorite editor to work with, and she would punch up your writing and make it so snarky and cool. Like, I remember I had to review Owl City once after that, and I said something like, "Oh, it all comes across a little bit wimpy," and she changed that line to, "Who wrote this, a man or a My Little Pony?" And she was just like a great kind of classic New York editor that was just acerbic and funny, and I liked working with her. And I was like, man, music's cool. And here's the thing, like, the more I covered music, the more I realized how interesting musicians are. Actors are beautiful and boring. Like, you can go to a red carpet and, talk to Selena Gomez and say, why did you take this role? And they'll just stare at you kind of dead in the eyes and say, it was so great to work with the director, and it was an honor to be across from blah, 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 blah. Like, no one cares. They don't tell stories. Like, they're contractually obligated to be there. They don't often want to be promoting their movies. Actors are their own, or musicians rather. Musicians are their own product. They're very on. They're very crazy. They really want to be understood. They really want their music to be interpreted the way that they meant it. And so it just was more interesting, frankly. And it wasn't so intentional to be like, oh, I'm going to be a country music thing now. But pretty quickly it did set in, and I had to own, I was like, I do find this more interesting.